How are you all feeling?
Good.
Maybe I should also face the audience a bit.
Right.
So we can start with a quick round of introductions. So, do you want to say about you and what you work with to start with, Janne?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Janne Lehtinen, Chief Science Officer at Semicon, and we build scalable quantum processors and enable technology for quantum industry. I've been in the company now, of course, from the start, as I'm one of the co-founders, so 2.5 years. And we've grown to 25 persons now during this.
Good. So a couple of words about Quanted and myself. So Quanted is an industrial tech-focused VC fund. We started in 2023. So we invest in industrial SaaS and more broader kind of deep tech, but everything that has a industrial link to it. We're based in Helsinki and Zurich, and we're investing from our first fund of 70 million euros. And my own background is actually more on the private equity side. So I've been with a large buyout fund for many years, and before that, as a consultant.
All right. My name is Galina. I lead talent acquisition at IQM for the past 4 years. IQM is a full-stack quantum computing company, so we at Semicon you build processors and QPUs, which is very exciting, and it's really at the heart of the technology. We, on top of that, build everything around that, including control electronic software and so on and so forth, and deliver it to our customers on site, on premises. My background is obviously in talent acquisition and startups. So happy to talk about talent today with everyone.
Now we're talking about scaling deep tech companies. And how do you scale a deep tech company from 1 to 100? And scaling a deep tech in Nordics especially, of course, the first question that comes is, when we do interesting companies in quantum or advanced materials or semiconductors, do we have the talent pool here, and how do we scale? Is there a talent shortage? How do we handle it as a startup scale-up VC? So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, if I'll go first. So kind of for us, like you have the really nice research focus here to the quantum side. So that's why there is good local pool, but that's of course very limited. So already thinking that we have now 25 persons, but we have 10 nationalities in the company. So it means that the talent is kind of global. You need to have this kind of hub to get the people joining and have kind of the ecosystem that supports the growth. And I think our big brother IQM there, who have done it 10x to us, have also kind of similar views.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. So we are already past 300 employees, so you are at actually very exciting stage, especially with hiring. So yeah, from day one, everything has to be international, right? So we have relocated talent seriously from day one. Our co-founders also from different countries. They did meet in Aalto though, so there is definitely ecosystem and good playground here in Finland or just generally in Nordics. However, it's true that the talent is global, so we still relocate people from everywhere in the world to Finland, to Germany. We have quite a lot of offices nowadays. However, this is very important to consider. You cannot just kind of lock yourself into one country and hope that you can grow the talent as well, but probably not fast enough for the type of technology and type of business that we are working with.
But do you have to open offices in different countries when you're scaling up, or do you bring them all to Finland?
You have to do both.
Both.
Yeah, I guess if you look from a kind of top-down perspective on Finland, I guess there are some areas where you're kind of forming an ecosystem in, such as quantum. But I guess it's also from a kind of a national, even a regional level in the Nordics, to really kind of double down on the areas where we're strong, to get that internal talent in, right? And also external talent, I guess. And then communicate it. Because I think at the moment, if you look just in Finland, I guess people are speaking about so many different areas. Quantum being one, but there's like 10, 15 different topics. So to really decide on which are the ones they're going to double down on and then communicate it, I think that's going to be extremely important in this whole kind of talent part of the thing. And I mean, practically, I think also, even for the very early stage companies, some that we have in our portfolio, I think this kind of dual office thing is actually has been working for them. So you kind of move the office, or you create an office where you actually have more kind of hotspots for the talent. I think that's the easiest way and the fastest way, because everything else is going to take a long time.
Yeah. And Karita, welcome.
Hi, I'm so sorry I'm late. I was actually told to be here at 20 past 12 because everything was running late. So I had no idea that we were starting, so truly apologizing, jumping
no
midway
worries.
through. But I was hearing some lovely discussions already going on.
No, we're talking about the scaling deep tech and the talent shortage and how to handle that. So what are your
Perfect.
thoughts on that?
Well, of course, this is jumping in right now. Not sure if this has been, mentioned, but I think there is definitely a lot of talk about the talent and the scaling. Like there is much talent found, especially in Finland and the Nordics, thanks to the research, science universities, and the programs that we have. So I don't think this is a problem, to be honest. What it always comes down to that in the companies, you need to have the balance between the skill sets, like the commercial talents as well. And just today I heard from several investors mentioning that this seems to be still slightly a challenge when it comes to especially early stage companies, like how can you find the combination of these talents? So it's not only the research-based scientists, for example, from the universities. So it would be interesting to see how could we connect the right type of people together when it comes to the founding of these companies, because I think overall we have a lot of sales talents, not just in the Nordics, but in the EU. And after everything has gone still remotely, I think these are a lot of tools that we can still leverage in order to have even maybe part of team based in other countries. So not necessarily in the same place.
Exactly. And they were also saying that from day one, it's an international team that these deep tech companies create. So it's inviting all kinds of people, all diversity, international language into one to bring the folks together.
Exactly.
Yeah. But another question is, anytime I travel to US and meet with founders there, you always see founders with a pitch deck, and then they would say they could raise the first 2 million with a pitch deck and then figure it out. So the access to capital and the size of funding rounds in the US always seems to be much bigger than we have in Nordics. So does the funding rounds here, are they too small? Does that have any challenge in scaling and recruiting and scaling as a deep tech company here? So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, from my experience, it's been still all right here. Not a problem. Maybe it makes you work more smartly, which is not a bad thing, that you focus on actually getting something out and not having the thing kind of thought 3 years and then you start work on towards getting something out.
Yes.
So in this way, I think it's fine. Of course, the later rounds, for us, it's been still kind of early stage, which is easy. Maybe the series B onwards, it'll be then a different story, but at least now it's fine.
And I mean, if you think about the kind of alternatives, at least in the Nordics, you don't have that many. You don't have the kind of same competition of big tech and so on. And I mean, in my honest opinion, I mean, nobody joins a startup for the salary. So to start with, so at least in my world, it shouldn't be an issue. But
Right. If I reflect on my experience, so raising something with pitch deck is great. I think it works really well for software as a service for the tech companies. I work in deep tech, semiconductors deep tech as well. So these are generally the company which actually, they are a company for maybe a few years, but research goes years and years before. So in these kind of cases, people generally work on technology for 10, 20 years. And actually, something else, I agree that it's not the salary that drives them. So for if you talk about Finland, there is a lot of spin-outs of VDT, for example, of all the university. It's also similar if we talk about US markets. In deep tech, it's generally like that. But then, however, you can raise more money. So when we started at IKEM, I think it was the biggest seed round. Now we have one of the biggest Series B rounds, but that is very different technology, again, if we talk about software as a service or other tech, because you just don't need such a big initial investment to create a chip, have a foundry, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of talk, obviously, about the lack of growth funding capital in the Europe, especially if you compare to the US right now. But there starts to be already more new funds being set up, and I think also EU is really stepping up. Earlier this year, I joined. They have a new program. It's called the STEP Scale Up. So it's a new initiative started by the EIC, where they focus purely on investing, equity investments, from 10 to 30 million in deep tech companies in the EU. The whole idea is that how can we ensure that the companies still remain here instead of moving to US or outside when it comes to accessing growth funding. So it's a new way how companies can leverage this EU funding and then secure some other growth funding from different companies. And I think the budget available is almost 900 million euros that they have for the coming year. So I think this is a great opportunity as well. EU and Nordics is quite well known that we have these governmental funding instruments as well, which it's another discussion to talk about the positive and the other parts about that. But I think the message of the story here is the fact that there is growth funding available in the market here. Problem is probably that how can you find it? How can you access it? And I think this still remains a major limit when it sometimes comes to the companies as well.
Interesting that I didn't know about the
example about the lack of information
yes,
that goes around.
Thanks for sharing. Another area that always fascinated me when deep tech started to move up was the researcher-led founding team and researcher CEOs for the first time. Because for a long time I would always say in the tech, in the software SaaS world, if a developer is building a company, within like seed stage, they would say hire a business CEO immediately, then your company becomes investable. And in the deep tech space, how do you see researcher-led companies, and do you see how do they build commercial teams and scale commercially? Is there any thoughts on team dynamics? Is there any interesting new patterns emerge? What are your thoughts on that?
I think from an investor perspective, kind of looking at these teams all the time, there's like, I don't see any reason why a researcher or a kind of a PhD research driven person would not be able to kind of lead an organization as well as any kind of commercial driven. I mean that's not leadership skills. It's not kind of commercially driven in a way. I think the issue is that it's not about kind of the hiring even the commercial person. It's that there is lack of understanding of the kind of the go-to-market challenges and routes, and that's kind of that thinking comes along usually kind of too late, and it's very difficult to find your go-to-market in an efficient way if you haven't been at the customer kind of buying these services or products before. So for me, it's kind of that's not a kind of a relevant question. Is that of course they can be good leaders and CEOs and they can hire great people. It's more about kind of how do you get those people. I mean, I guess there was a dialogue earlier here on the stage. How do we get this kind of corporate people to come into the startup world? How do we get those people who have bought these services and products to kind of join these teams? I think that's the real question.
I think when we talk about skill sets in general, obviously because of the AI wave that we're right now going through, I think most of the discussions still focus on about the tech skill set, so to say, and do we need to have the same amount of, for example, developers or engineers as before? But I think still what is very important, and for the last years we've been very lacking focus in, is also that yes, you need to have, of course, the hard skills, but soft skills are as important as ever. And I feel that especially the way the world is now moving forward, having the human connections and interactions, or knowing at least how to also communicate and have the right type of team dynamics as well. I do believe this is something we have not focused too much. It's not something that is easily taught in universities. You don't actually really learn it anywhere, to be honest. But it would be great to bring that also as part of the overall discussions when it comes to talking about what type of skill sets are in the future needed, for example. And I think the soft skills are so important on that, because now more than ever, when it comes to human interactions, we're going to be valuing that more than we have probably in the last years anymore, because everything has already gone online and people really want to have these human connections. So how to really talk, how to present yourself, for example, and just how to communicate. The lack of communications within teams, that seems to be quite a general challenge when it comes. And I think, as Axel mentioned just earlier, I agree that when it comes to the management or leadership skills, doesn't matter whether you have a commercial background or science background. I don't think that matters. It's all about communication, to be honest, in the end as well.
Actually, Galina, you were talking about this space, yes.
Yeah, so I just wanted to also hear what other people have to say, because I can, of course, echo what Axel and Karita say. I also think that just because you have technical background doesn't mean that you cannot be a good leader or a good CEO. It doesn't mean that you can always need to hire a commercial person additional to the team. But what is important, again, like kind of looping back to what Karita said in the beginning, it's important to find these people who serve as a link, for example. So you have to actually figure out your tech, but also your commercial side. And it's important to sell early, because then only then you know if people actually want to buy it. What is the feedback from the customers? How can you adjust? Maybe whatever you're building, like nobody wants that. Even if you have amazing tech, but nobody wants it, you cannot have a company. So it's a very important challenge to solve for, I guess, any company. In deep tech, I do think it's also super difficult, reflecting on what I said as well, because the people have been working on this for tens of years, and it's a very difficult, hard pill to swallow if nobody wants to buy that, right? Luckily we are not in this situation, so we are quite successful with sales right now. But yeah, like having these people kind of in the middle, translators, maybe some people with engineering background who went into sales, maybe some sales people who went into engineering, whatever it is. It actually all comes down to soft skills and curiosity, grit, resilience, so on and so forth. Hope it was a good reflection.
And also what Karita said on predicting the talent need.
Yeah.
How do you do that at IQM, or how do you approach that kind of a problem?
So we have a quantum computer and has a crystal ball next to it. It's very difficult to predict, obviously, but again, when we look for talent, yes, you need hard skills that you need right now, but it's also, once again, curiosity. Are these people able to learn quickly? Are they able to adjust? And if I reflect on people's journey at IQM, so people who have been with us for 5 years, 6 years, 4 years, and whatnot, they actually, many of them kind of become specialists, or they specialize in one area of quantum computing or software engineering or whatever it is. But many of them are actually become more or less generalists. So some of them, go to product, some of them go to marketing, some of them go to sales, technical pre-sales, and so on and so forth. And I think this is the type of people you want to find early, and you want to attract early, and you want to grow them with the company. But it is also important to kind of scout them early and possibly educate them with whatever is possible. Of course, it's not always easy to kind of, when you do research, or, you have to sell, then also like, how come I also have to educate people who are not in the company? But this is something that we've been also trying to do quite extensively at IQM. With IQM Academy, we have a quantum school nowadays, and so on and so forth, so people can actually access it and try to grow into quantum in the future.
Mm-hmm. And Jenna, do you in your Semicon have some kind of a hiring roadmap where you anticipate some needs in the coming 12 months or something like that?
Yeah. We've had it from the start. So,
okay.
So kind of the roles have been, we had 4 co-founders, so we kind of got the roles there already directly, who is kind of the marketing guy and who is the doing the technical roadmap and so on. And of course the hiring plan was there to kind of see that we get to the products in the end. And kind of separating these innovation cycles and trying to drive it so that we kind of have freedom to innovate, do things, but still that we get the products out, that we have the guys who can then actually deliver on the product front. And those are typically quite different, of course, that when your head is going to the left and right and everywhere and you are inventing new things, you cannot build anything stable when you are on that mindset. So you need to have 2 kind of people doing the job, and this has been clear, and this is kind of reflected to the roadmap. And now we are going more from the kind of research to getting it to the production.
Yeah. And Axel, what do you look for in a team as an investor? Like, these are like, my aha moments as a team.
Yeah. maybe kind of related to the whole skills discussion a little bit. I think it's very difficult to predict, what you will need, looking 3-5 years ahead. And and I agree with Karita. It's kind of, the world has changed, but I think there's somehow kind of an overemphasis nowadays on, everybody needs to learn skills, or you won't have a job. I think it's just, the same attributes is relevant now as they were 20 years ago, and they're going to be relevant, in 5 years' time. You want to hire smart, dedicated, adaptable people, and there is probably something along the kind of the soft skill element that is actually kind of changing maybe faster than on the other side. So I mean that's what I look for. Smart, dedicated, adaptable people. I don't think there's some kind of magic
No?
trick. That's it.
Karita, who do you look for?
I agree. I think if there was a magic or the right answer, we would all be just investing into the same companies and people, to be honest. But I mean, obviously, a balance of skill sets at all levels is always, a strong indicator that we would like to see. But I think something that is even more important, and what let's say we've witnessed in some of the companies we've invested, or when we talk to the teams, is also how are, especially let's say the management of the people, how are they interacting between each other? Because I've been in meetings where you have 3 founders and one of them is just dominating the whole discussion. The other ones don't even have a chance to, chime in or to say anything at all, because one person is just ruling the whole discussion. This is never a good sign, because especially when the company keeps scaling, if you have the founders and they have their own, roles, I think it's important to see how are they interacting. And that is taken then to the bigger level with the rest of the team as well. We always like to see what are also the rest of the team dynamics, not just at the management level, but how do they interact with the rest of the team as well. And obviously, again, there is really no right or wrong or how to see it. But to me, these little things of when they are talking, the way they are interacting between each other, it does say a lot. Or at least in my opinion, can say a lot of how are they going to be building and scaling their company in the future.
Yeah. Actually, then Galina, because IQM is now scaling like hyper growth scaling. So how do you manage keep the culture and values intact?
Oh wow, that's an excellent question. I think it's actually really, really important to figure out your team early on. Because if you don't, then you can't keep the culture and values up. That's pretty much boils down to that. So you do need to make sure that, because it's a constant flow of people coming in. It's different people, so obviously you need to make sure during your hiring process, how do you make sure that people maybe not only fit to your culture and to your values, but what do they add? And you cannot, so the culture also needs to be, innovative, adaptive, fast moving. You have to have pace. And that means that it also changes, but what you need to keep is this core value. Why are we doing this? Because if you don't know that, if you don't figure that out early, I think it's going to be damn difficult to attract funding, to attract people, attract customers. So I think this is at the core, kind of figuring out early on. And to make sure you keep it, again, hire the right people. And of course, there's plenty of other things that I can tell, but maybe I'll let also other people talk.
Yeah. So Janna, what do you think about this? Now that you're a small team but growing steadily, how do you think about this culture and values?
Yeah, it is of course been kind of one of the things that our CEO Himatri already brought to the company, that we kind of uphold these certain things, whether we do hiring or have meetings or everything. It's always kind of followed up.
Yeah.
And these core values are kind of the thing which is their day-to-day operation.
Yeah.
So I think that's the main thing, that everybody respects those, and if there is something, it's immediately kind of tackled on, whether it's new hire or somebody from the existing team that
Yes.
needs to be addressed. So.
Yeah. I see that the time is up. So Axel, some closing words on culture and values, if you have.
I can try. I mean, it's different if you're scaling from 300 to 500 people. Then you need to start codifying things into processes. What I've seen, and also from my own kind of background in a very different type of company, but the core DNA is the founder. It's the founder is the DNA, right? And he leads by example, and that's it. I think. I mean, someone needs to do it on a daily basis, and then people will just kind of suck in that, and they then become the the kind of the people who bring that forward. And I think that's I don't codifying things in a company going from 10 to 20. I don't think that brings a lot of value. It probably adds a lot of value for you at your stage, but for early stage, it's all about the culture is the founder basically, and that's it.
Kalita?
I couldn't agree more than what Axel said. I think that's especially important in the early stages, like setting by that they're showing the way the founders are interacting between each other, the way they are running the company, the way they're acting. It tells everything for the rest of the team, to be honest. And I know there's a lot of culture differences as well when it comes to working in the company, and I think that's important very early on to take into account. If you have people from different cultures, I mean, working here in the Nordics, we talk a lot about the work-life balance and its importance, but if we go to the US, for example, it's not the same level discussions. Then Asia, it's a completely different beast when it comes to the working ethics there as well. So I think that's also important in the early stage to take into account. A lot of companies, they crash or they go down when the culture differences are not taken into account very early stage already. So I think that's an also important part of finding a balance of how you want the company to be run.
Yeah, great. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining the panel, and for all the listeners. Wishing you the best of NORDEEP and all the very best in whatever you're building. Thanks so much for joining us, Aswas. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.